Good morning, everyone. We're just going to give it about 20 seconds for everyone to connect. Thank you so much for joining us. We are, of course, live this morning. I can see the numbers slowly, well, actually very quickly going up. So let's proceed with 2 minutes past. So yes, good morning and welcome to today's webinar. My name is Helen Muzzard and I'm the CMO of IAB Europe. And we're delighted to have you here as we embark on an exciting journey into the world of Omnichannel. So this morning in the next hour, we will be unpacking the latest industry buzzword, Omnichannel. And we aim to provide you with a comprehensive understanding of what Omnichannel truly means and debunk any misconceptions surrounding it. The session will be hosted by Nick Welsh, who is the head of programmatic EMEA for IAS and is also the chair of IAB Europe's programmatic trading committee. So you're definitely in the right hands this morning. And he is going to be joined by a brilliant lineup of industry experts from our committees. And together, they're going to guide us through the intricacies of Omnichannel, enlightening us on what it is and discussing the journey the industry must undertake to leverage its true potential. As we are live this morning, after the presentation, we'll have an opportunity for a Q&A. So if you've got any questions throughout, you can put those into the Q&A box, which you can find at the bottom of the interface. So with that, I'm going to hand over to Nick.
Thank you, Helen. Thanks for the kind introduction. So yeah, my name's Nick, Nick Welsh. I head up programmatic for across EMEA at Integral Ad Science, and also currently I have the privilege of being the elected chair for the programmatic trading committee. A hot topic for us recently has been discussing omnichannel. Obviously, programmatic has advanced incredibly over the last few years. And we're seeing programmatic being brought to multiple channels, which obviously creates an opportunity to drive even more efficiencies for marketeers. So omnichannel being the latest innovation, and obviously what we wanted to do is kind of really understand what we mean by omnichannel, because I think there are a multitude of different definitions. So with the IAB wanting to be a thought leader and also kind of help educate and bring opinion in from experts across the industry, we wanted to really unpack what omnichannel means. And I'm delighted today to be joined by a host of industry experts who are going to help us do that. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce you to our panel. If we could move through to the next slide. Okay. And I think if my panel can kind of join via by just unmuting their screens, that'd be fantastic. Amazing. All right, so what I'm going to do is ask each of you, if you may, to just introduce yourselves very briefly, and then we'll jump straight into the topic. So I think I'll do it in order, if I may. So is Alice with us on the call? Okay, well, I think Alice is going to be joining us shortly. So Alex, if you don't mind, I'll jump straight to you. Alex, would you kindly introduce yourself?
Not at all, not at all. So, yeah, so my name is Alex McGibbon. I'm the global head of Omnichannel at Xaxis. And obviously, due to my job title, Omnichannel is very dear to my heart. It's what I think about most of the time. So yeah, really looking forward to hearing from everybody on the panel.
Fantastic. Thank you, Alex. And over to you, Eki.
Thanks, Nick. Yes, my name is Eckhard Schottbohm. I'm RVP in Northern Europe for Pragmatic. And yes, Omnichannel is getting very interested over time because there are a lot of linear or classical media that are going into programmatic, which is also having a factor here.
Thank you, Eki. And over to you, Steph.
Hi, everyone. My name is Steph, and I'm business development team lead at Smarto, a part of Verve Group across EMEA region. I've been in the ad tech industry for the 7 years already and worked on both demand and supply sides. So I'm very excited about our today's topic.
Fantastic. Thank you, Steph, and welcome guests. I think, as we alluded to at the beginning of the conversation, omnichannel is a kind of new buzzword. but the channels that kind of feed into it potentially are not. And programmatic has kind of been feeding into those channels for some time. But with that in mind, can we start by asking, really kind of top line, what is omnichannel and what isn't omnichannel? And I think, Alex, given the omnichannel component to your job title, I'd like to start with you, if that's okay.
Yeah, of course. I think it's a really great question, because it's a really big question. Omnichannel can mean lots of different things to different people, depending on what side of the industry you're on, and even what other industries think of when they talk about omnichannel. But when we're looking at omnichannel, we're really talking about it from the activation side of things. And if you think about what we're trying to do, really with anything in digital advertising, is we're trying to be more efficient. We're trying to drive better performance for clients, and essentially to do more with less. And I think omnichannel is kind of just an extension of that. It's a fairly complicated extension of that, at least initially. But I think the idea of omnichannel is, if you can drive that efficiency by having the ability to move budgets fluidly between channels, to move to the best performing channel within a campaign, then that's a clear way of driving better performance, of having more efficiencies. To do this is perhaps not super straightforward at first, but I think the key point is that we really need a way of measuring the impact across these channels to determine how they're performing. And once we can do that, we're able to drive kind of these efficiencies and better performance, and to do more with less.
Nick, you are on mute. Sorry.
Thank you, Eki. I don't know how, post-COVID, I should know to unmute myself, but there we go. Proves that this is live. Maybe this will get edited out. I completely agree with you, Alex. I think the IAB Europe attitudes to programmatic survey came out at DMexco last year. Quick plug, next one's due very soon and will be announced at DMexco this year. But the primary driver for programmatic was in fact, improved and increased efficiencies. So it's really interesting to hear you say that's kind of the primary driver behind omnichannel. With that in mind, coming to you next, Steph, if it's about, do you concur with kind of that view on omnichannel?
I definitely agree on that view. And I wanted to say that currently I hear a lot that we mix, multi-channel, cross-channel and omni-channel advertising all together. Despite the fact that there is a myth in my understanding that this is the same thing, right? I still believe that all these strategies, of course, involve using multiple channels to reach users. And there are still important differences between them, right? So I think multi-channel advertising means more promoting a product from multiple angles, right, across different channels. And here we have focus on product itself, not on the end customer journey. So, for example, easily to say, the user saw an ad on website or on in-app, then user placed the website via Google search, then made an order, and then made a final purchase. And this is actually it. Here, the user's journey is finished, right? And of course, multiple channels are used, but all these campaigns are running independently in this case. While when we talk about cross-channel advertising, we still say that it's technically multi-channel, and but this uses a more seamless approach, I would say. So all these channels mix together and match to ensure a smooth customer experience. So in this case, we can make an example as click and collect model, where advertiser interacts with user across different channels, online and offline together. Omnichannel, I think, is an evolution of this cross-channel advertising. And the focus here is, of course, on user himself and his relationship with advertiser. What's the difference here? I think the difference is in data. So in this case, there is a deep analysis of data from previous user interactions collected across all channels. So let's say we analyze what kind of products were viewed and purchased, which ads were viewed, clicked, right? And then this data is used in order not to show user the same ad or the ad with product that was already purchased, right? And in this case, I believe the goal of Omnichannel, of course, is to eliminate these boundaries between online and offline, to make the budgets fluid, and of course, to ensure the flawless return on investment process for the advertiser.
Okay, super interesting. So if I understood you correctly, what you're saying is that it's not about retargeting. So cross-channel is about using the data and then retargeting the user, perhaps across those same channels. So that would be considered cross-channel to you, not omni-channel.
Yes, that's right.
Okay. So omni-channel then is about, okay, that's cross-channel is a relevant component of omni-channel, but you're then taking that data and you're using that data to inform perhaps a different message on a different platform.
That's correct.
Does that chime with, and welcome Alex to the panel. I don't know if you want to briefly introduce yourself and maybe pick up on that on that point. I mean, is that something that you agree with, Alice? Being a DSP, obviously, you know, you're going to have access to kind of potentially that cookie data, which Steph was just talking about being much more of a cross-channel experience than a omni-channel experience. Does that chime with you?
So I think I agree and I disagree. Just to be slightly difficult. So firstly, yes, apologies for being slightly late. Misunderstanding on my side about the time zone. So I'm Alice Beecroft. I'm over at Yahoo, and I head up our global business strategy, global business sort of DSP strategy and partnerships for international. So for me, omni-channel is about having a connected message across more than two channels. And I think that's the important sort of bit to sort of where I kind of agree with what Steph's saying, is it's not just about retargeting from one channel to another. To be truly omni-channel, you're actually bringing in sort of 3+ channels in order to have that sort of cohesive messaging going across to the end user. And where I do agree is it is about harnessing the data and potentially modifying the messaging according to what sort of parts of the user journey the user is actually in. But there's also the element whereby measurement has to come in and go completely beyond those individual channels as well. There's no point having the messaging, you know, transcending single individual channels, and having the targeting transcending that, if you're not then also able to sort of measure back and actually see at what stage in the different sort of user journey the impact of the individual channel actually sort of drives incremental. Now, I think it sounds quite easy to do, but I think it's incredibly difficult to do, because depending on the individual products, or, you know, what it is that the advertiser is pushing, users are at different stages within their actual journey and their relationship with that particular advertiser. So that's why I don't necessarily think it's a sequential path that you follow, that you use this channel, then you use that channel, then you use that channel, then you use that channel. You need to be able to identify all the different pathways that a user might come from being a net new. It might be that they're a user that's coming from a competitor. It might be that they're a brand lover. It might be that they dip in and out in it, and it's purely tactical based on the functionality of the product that the advertiser is actually pushing. So for me, omnichannel is taking all of those different things into account, from the targeting, the user journey, the messaging, but also then being able to do a 360 on the measurement as well.
It sounds like you've just described the role of a planner, of a media planner. Potentially,
yes. But as I said, I think it's easy to do. It's not necessarily actually that straightforward. When you take into account all of the complexities that we especially have in Europe, the fact that we are bringing together now offline channels and online channels, the fact that the connector that brings those channels together is not the same across all of the different channels. I don't necessarily think that at the planner stage, they necessarily have all that information in order to be able to do it in a seamless manner. And I think that's where technology from a DSP standpoint comes in to actually drive that efficiency and drive that effectiveness by providing that sort of connected bridge throughout the different channels. And then, as I mentioned, with the measurement, feeding it back so that the planning cycle can be tweaked and can be modified based on the incremental lift versus the individual channel lift.
Okay. And okay, coming to you, and coming specifically representing the sales side, obviously information, data needs to be passed from multiple channels. I mean, firstly, I need to ask you the same question, although we're quite deep into the kind of the details. For you, is omnichannel, what is omnichannel, and can you kind of bring to life the sell side component from an omnichannel perspective?
Happy to do that. So there have been a lot of good comments already. There are a few topics that apply for us as a SSP as well. So Alex mentioned that there is a need for being fluid when it comes to deliver the budget, so to adjust along a campaign. There's also the situation about what Steph said with the solution to have a customer journey to really identify with data where are the different touch points. And I would say omnichannel is also a bit about touch points as well that we see along the way, because programmatic is offering a lot of new touch points. And that was just as we have started this conversation, I was thinking about my early times selling print magazines and selling cross-media offerings, which is the starting point of being kind of omni-channel. So to show the incremental reach, which was really much in silos for every sales house that has delivered. And then Alice just said, what is the job of a DSP, where it's coming to bringing this all together, coming into measurement. I think omni-channel is also in a way where we now bring more things into an ad serving based delivery, which is what we are doing. Is offering also the challenge not to see and to measure and to be very precise on what we are doing in our programmatic world, to just enabling the delivery and also bringing the right data sets into that. I think we need to work all together as an industry, because in some of the classical media channels, and I'm just going back to that stage, there is a planning both on data sets, and there are made assumptions. And sometimes we are having a solution, not a solution, we have a situation where we need to find a solution for that. We have a lot of data in digital. And when it comes to measurement, not to over-report ourselves, to just focus also on the predefined delivery and the planning we are doing, like how do we measure incremental reach between linear TV and CTV and online video? And where is like in-app, not only mobile, where is it also CTV? So it's sometimes also about finding the right definitions for omnichannel based on the parameter that we want to use. Is it the way that, is it the format? Is it the type of content transporter that we're having, like apps? And how do we measure incrementality across sometimes multiple markets, because standards are different across multiple markets as well. And we're all working in companies that are working across multiple markets. So there is another dimension for us in here as well that we need to solve. I think it is where we start with that situation. I think how I see us in that play as an SSP, we need to make sure that we deliver the right tools to help also to reduce the number of impressions that we're pushing based on specific data sets. And we need to ensure that we bring in the channels that deliver the most traffic at the moment and are standing for the most users that we are bringing to DSPs or buyers like Xaxis that we can help also players like Smarto and Verve to just transport this in the right way, that we have the right signals to then enable buyers to choose on those signals, because the story is almost very individual what the focus is on delivering. So I can talk to 6 holdcos, everyone has the same challenge, but the ways they are taking are slightly different across multiple markets and different holdcos. So we need to be very agnostic and to find a middle path here as an industry as well.
Okay, I mean, between you, I've picked out 5 kind of keywords: fluidity of budgets, measurement. It's not about retargeting. It's about data across each of the touch points. And it's about presenting the right opportunity to buyers. I just want to come back to, well, 2 that really stand out for me, and that's that they seem to be 3 of them seem to be interlinked, right? So in order for budgets to be fluid and move between the channels within an omni-channel campaign, I'm assuming you're going to need data to inform where those budgets should be moving. How can we is there portability between kind of data offline and online, for example, with an offline shopping experience, with an online shopping experience? And how do you solve for fluidity in that example? And I'll come to you on that one, Alex.
So yeah, it's a really good question, and I think there definitely is portability if you have clients that are willing to share that data and be able to use that data. But I would also say that, you know, listening to what everybody said so far, it's really interesting that there's a lot of very similar views, but there's a lot of additional information to kind of unpack from that. And I think the really interesting points about omnichannel, which also makes it, as Alice said, it can sound easy, but it's not. It is very complicated. Is that because we have multiple platforms, multiple markets, multiple ways of doing things within each market and within each platform, you're really looking for a way to standardize is the wrong word, but to kind of cut across that as much as you can. And that's why when I mentioned earlier, I was talking about a kind of a universal way of measuring, a universal KPI of measurement across channels to understand, okay, what do we understand the impact of these channels to be? And therefore, when, you know, that's just at a planning stage, if we can understand where, you know, what level percentage of a budget for an omnichannel campaign should start with each channel, when the campaign is running, you can then optimize in campaign against how the campaigns are performing against this measurement KPI. And I think it's really important to be able to have that. And then on top of that, you then need to be able to model that to the business outcome, whether that be sales, as you've just mentioned, or something else. So I think there are lots of pieces that make it quite complicated. But additionally, you will have some omnichannel campaigns. And again, I'm using omnichannel as a catch-all for kind of, as Alice was saying, you know, kind of 2 channels or more running a connected message, a fluid budget. But if you have similar channels that have the same KPIs right now that you can kind of push for as an outcome, whether that be something as basic as clicks, you know, you can actually do that immediately on those kinds of channels. But when you're starting to bring in sets of channels that don't have those same measurements between them, a digital out of home and a display, audio, video kind of thing, then you do need something that is a universal KPI across it. And that's where we need the data to be kind of aligned, and we need to take data from multiple places. I think it's where we need help from the platforms. And yeah, that's really an area that we need to focus on to ensure that we can build something that works for all channels to really enable us to have that kind of fluid budget shift to the right place.
Can I just ask a question there, Alex?
Yeah.
Do you think that's realistic though? Because if you think about out of home and you think about connected TV, when I say CTV, I mean the device type. I know there's a massive conversation going on right now as to what actually CTV means. I've lost probably about 3 days of my life discussing it. When you actually think about those sort of non-user owned devices, the KPI that drives impact is going to be very, very different to, say, a mobile phone or a desktop. And then we then start to bring in things like audio, where, okay, it might be done over a mobile phone, but the way that people engage with the content is obviously not by, clicking. I'm just wondering whether or not we're asking for the impossible, or potentially, planners are asking for the impossible for technology to move towards a universal KPI.
Yeah, I think it's a really good question, and I think it's a really valid question, because that is, fundamentally, how do we get to a point where we're able to do that? Would I say it's possible? I think it is. I think that there's a GroupM Nexus product called Unmissable, which is doing that at the moment. And not to go into too much detail on that, but the way that I look at this is, we are going through a learning process now, and how each channel is booked right now, how each channel is planned for activation right now is independent. So what we need to think about this when we're looking at kind of activation planning and this measurement is taking a kind of test and learn approach and adapting over time. So, taking the idea of, okay, if we look at the data that we have from the industry, from industry kind of players, whether that is, somebody who is running panels, or somebody that is pulling data from, performance over time, like a DSP, it's taking the idea, proving it through rigorous testing, and being able to then link that kind of measurement to these outcomes. And I think there's a real opportunity for us as an industry to experiment and push boundaries. Omnichannel should be and can be disruptive, but in the right way, in a really positive way for everyone. And I think what we have to do is not just work towards this universal KPI, but be very transparent about it. When we're talking to clients, say, this is what we believe is the best makeup of the channels in terms of performance. But we, as much as we would want to, we maybe don't understand a client's business as much as they do, of course. So really take input from the clients. If the clients think that CTV is a really big driver of their performance, then we can adjust how we measure this kind of universal KPI, and really kind of have that connection with the clients and the understanding of their business and their data to enable us to put something together, which is this universal KPI, that we can then use as a model to try and then drive the business outcome that the client needs.
You do realize you've created a new acronym for the industry, UKPI.
That wasn't on purpose.
That's a first. That's an IAB Europe first. We'll have that, Alex. That's coming out.
Can I ask you a question as well, Alex?
Yeah, go for it.
When you have conversations with clients, would clients think about combining linear TV and, let's say, digital online video and CTV? Would they think about that as omni-channel as well?
I think, again, a great question. I would say yes and no. It depends on who you speak to. But I think, unfortunately, that would be the answer for most of the questions that we're asking about what is omnichannel and do you believe this is this? Because I think that there is a definite, to one client, omnichannel will mean something where it's literally every single channel, and that's all that they would consider omnichannel. That is, offline and online. Whereas obviously for Xaxis, we're talking programmatic omnichannel. For GroupM, we're talking kind of all, I guess, digital omnichannel, let's say. But yeah, I would say that yes, there will be clients that think that, and they're right to think that, because it's their business and that's how they think about that. And how we solve for that is yet another question that yeah, I don't have an answer to. That's not part of my job title right now.
I can give a little bit of a comment on that. We are definitely seeing that over at Yahoo, with the partnerships that we have in place with Vizio in the US, Samba TV in the UK that was recently announced, whereby not only are clients wanting to drive incremental reach between the two channels, what they're also wanting to do is actually tie the channels together and thereby actually have some level of consistent messaging going from linear TV across into connected TV and potentially across into VOD as well. The main reason being is the way that users are consuming those three different types of content for the most part, they're consuming them when they're in a slightly different environment and they're potentially in a different, slightly different frame of mind. There's also the ability to add in different levels of engagement in connected TV, which you can't do in linear. And then obviously when you come across into BVOD, you've got the ability to overlay even more data and connect through into other, you can physically click, for example, if you're watching the content on a mobile or display. So we're definitely starting to see it in the UK, but the market where I think is probably ahead in Europe is France. And that's simply down to the infrastructure that they have in place there with IPTV, where if anything, the linear and the CTV market sort of came together very naturally because of that technological infrastructure that was in place, and they are naturally sort of planning those together. And that we do consider those to be omni-channel, because it's a different channel, but it's different messaging. It's using data. It's about getting the end user to experience what they need to experience within the journey that they have. And we're seeing budgets for that as well.
Yeah, I see this. I'm based in Germany, but I see this coming up as a problem as well, because it's the question: who is planning for the budget, right? Who has the say when it comes to building and campaign? Like, is it the AD planner? Is it the programmatic planner? Is it the digital planner in the team? And I think this is where we also need to work as an industry, to work together with the agencies on that kind of things. There is a word pushed out to agencies for a long time, which is the multi-screen planner, which is working in a 360 way. But this is not always the case, because it's based on specific different requirements, because the way of planning is sometimes different. And worked a few years ago in Xaxis in Germany, and it was very interesting to work with the TV planners to create a structure where you can combine digital and classical TV in a way that you build the campaign planning right from the beginning, where you have then included into the KPIs the whole campaign, with including video across multiple screens and TV in one campaign, which was surprisingly for me always, because in conversations, having a AV planner presenting this to a client has created less questions than if I would have presented as a digital first person to the client the same thing. I would have received a lot of questions around, what is the reporting here? How can I measure the split between everything? But making use of this mechanics coming from AV planners has helped a lot to also push the omni-channel message forward a lot, and also become more combined in linear and digital or programmatic planning.
I think you can say the same for digital out of home. I mean, the same thing's happening there. And I mean, dare I say, back in the day, back in my sort of 15 years ago when I was first working in mobile, the same thing was true then. And mobile now has become sort of just part and parcel of everyday planning. So I would hope with time the same thing happens for TV and the same things happens for out of home. But completely agree with you. It's a very grey landscape as to who it is that actually is handling those new, I mean, they're not new, but those sort of additional channels that are coming in, and whether or not that's all going to fall under potentially a new sort of, you mentioned multi-screen, or maybe it's going to be an omni-channel team that agencies are going to start to push out, that actually have both the digital expertise, but also the expertise for those non-user defined, non-cookieless screens. But yeah, it'll be interesting to see what happens over the next year or two.
Yeah, I think that,
touching on that. Sorry, Alex.
Sorry, I was just going to kind of to finish that from my side. I think that's exactly right. And when you talk about those online and offline channels working together, it is coming back to what we were talking earlier about the data and data infrastructures and all that data being able to be shared at the right points to have the right people, as you're talking about, Alice, planning and getting the campaigns ready to go. Yeah, I think they're all really key points.
And on that point, actually, I wanted to touch on where we have kind of advanced measurement techniques when it comes to, I say advanced, we have some accepted standards, whether or not we buy into those kind of metrics as real indicators of performance, such as clicks. I don't know, but is there, given the maturity of kind of mobile and online display and video buying, is there not a risk within an omnichannel experience that, because of the performance metrics that are being delivered against those channels, that we will optimize, or will favor optimizing towards those channels within an omnichannel experience, because we don't have mature or kind of agreed standards of data from kind of digital out of home or CTV. I mean, like CTV, Alice, you made a great point as you joined the call. There's a big debate that will continue for a long time about actually what CTV is. If we still got questions around that, do we really have an effective omnichannel opportunity now? I mean, is that a limitation?
We definitely have an effective omnichannel opportunity right now. I think they're just, I mean, coming back to Alex's point about we need to make use of the data, and we need to have the right data infrastructure in place and ensure that we're focusing the right measurement and the right budgets in the right places. I mean, you can measure all of these channels that we've talked about, but bringing it all back to clicks, sorry, that's lazy planning. That's incredibly lazy. I mean, we've moved on, from 12, 15 years ago where CTR was king. We need to be thinking more about, I suppose, the sort of post initial user engagement measurement. So whether that's reach, whether that's offline sales, whether that is your panel-based brand uplift, obviously with a large enough panel to have data relevancy. I think we need to sort of transcend away from that initial sort of, dare I say, user engagement, and look at things in a more holistic manner, rather than just sort of focusing in on one single measurement or one single channel. And I think that's probably coming back to what Alex was saying earlier about the having a universal KPI. Part of me thinks potentially that's a little bit of a unicorn, as in it's great in theory, but when you actually take into account all the different elements that come into it, is that possible? Look, maybe there can be 5 different universal KPIs according to what the final outcome is that the client's trying to achieve, and the channel mix. And, maybe that's a standardization that we ought to be looking towards. So if you include out of home, you include display, you include mobile, that this is like the main KPI that has been proven through a lot of the test and learning that Alex, which I completely agree with, is 100% needed, has shown to be what drives the efficiency. But there's loads of active omnichannel activity that's out there that's showing that as long as you bring those channels together in an effective way, you measure, you really plan it appropriately, it can work incredibly well.
So as an advertiser, quite often they will look at econometrics or media mix modeling to kind of identify, to see what kind of media has delivered sales uplift or whatever goal that they're working towards. Do we think that we need to be much closer to I say we as an industry, do we need to be much closer to econometrics when we're talking about omnichannel, given the challenges around measurement and the lack of a universal KPI? Is that the answer?
So I would answer that. I would say yes, that would be ideal. And I would say, I think, Alice, your point there on having 5 universal KPIs, that's really, if you look in the future when everybody's running omnichannel campaigns and this is all kind of been resolved, I would expect the universal KPI to be for each campaign rather than for any omnichannel campaign. So I definitely agree with that, and I think that this econometrics or MMM data from a client is absolutely key in understanding, as I mentioned earlier on, clients know their business better than anybody. So to take that input and have that part of the universal KPI, I think that is kind of the holy grail. That's where you want to be. That's what you want to be able to work closely enough with the client to have that, but add in data from other sources as well, whether that be past performance on campaigns for particular verticals, whether that be, you know, other performance campaign, you know, coming in from platforms or from other partners. You want to be able to take the best of the information that we have. You know, we have a lot of data in this industry. We have a lot, some would say too much, but, you know, we need to take advantage of the right data at the right time. And I think that goes for just about everything we do, but it's particularly important when we're talking about a universal KPI.
I wanted to add here, so I was just listening what you mentioned, guys, and I was thinking about examples from our side, right, when we had this omni-channel campaigns. And I would say that currently we are seeing that it's more like a standard mix, right, like display across web, in-app, or video across in-app, web, or CTV, right? And as Elise mentioned, I would say that currently advertisers are more lazy, and at least what we are seeing, that they used to use, let's say, clicks or click-through rate for display, video completion rate for video, right? And what's important here from our perspective is, of course, that was already mentioned, a holistic approach per each campaign, right, to use different measurement and different KPIs. Let's say we take into account campaign across in-app, web, and digital out of home or out of home, right? This is where we have difficulties with out of home, right? So in this case, I would also say that we should separate the KPIs for short-term and long-term. Let's say short-term would be standard ones, clicks or click-through rate, and long-term, where the digital out of home applies, would be brand uplift surveys, right? Then analysis of organic search and sales, right? So more, I would say, post-sales activities. So this is what we are currently also trying to do on our side. And what's more important, like we are seeing from our side, that also advertisers want to target the right audiences in the first place. And this is where this data approach comes into play. And this is where we are able, right, despite the fact that we have all these GDPR complications, TCFD2, cookieless world coming, right? This is where at least we are trying to combine like geo-segments, geo-targeting, behavioral data, contextual data, at least to target the right audience in the first place, and then to apply a holistic approach to find out what would be the best KPIs and metrics for this specific campaign, and then to measure the effectiveness and, of course, the end goal for advertiser, return on investment.
Maybe there's one thing, sorry, Nick, maybe there's one other thing that is driving me in this conversation, is that there are a lot of trends coming, as Steph just mentioned. There are a lot of things that are affecting the industry. There's also something where I think we will solve this situation in the mid or long term when we also make commitments on how to work with partners. So we try to engage with also buyers and other companies to say, like, okay, how can we evolve this in the future? Because the risk in the programmatic industry is always, there's always coming something new, not only something that is from a regulatory perspective affecting things, but there's always a new player coming, let's say out of the US or out of other markets that you need to jump on, that is creating a new solution. But you cannot jump from one topic to another all the time. You need to have also a bit of patience to just implement processes and make them successful. I know that that Xaxis is working a long time with this one solution, so to just build things on top of that, which is helping them to adjust on those kind of things. But when you change the foundation, for example, during a year multiple times, then it's also for tech players like us very difficult to really identify the trends. And we also need to make some decisions on what to focus. So it is also good to have a bit of alignment across the industry on what is really going, what we are after, because otherwise we are investing too much but not executing on what we have just implemented because we are jumping to a new topic. This is sometimes difficult because there is also resources invested into that. And this is just the understanding is growing when we have good conversations also with all sites like DSPs, agencies or publishers to really understand, okay, what are the things that we are focusing on? And this is why we try to bring people in one room to just understand where we need to go. Not only in committees like this group, but also outside of that, which is helping to get a real good understanding where the future vision lies in that one.
And on that note, is there a role for, I mean, you talked about new technologies being iterated all the time, either coming from the US or homegrown in Europe. Is there a role actually for an independent measurement? I mean, we talked about kind of the DSPs being set up and being able to kind of buy across multiple channels. We've talked about the SSP being able to kind of serve publisher data, but also inventory to the DSPs. But in order for advertisers to make informed decisions from a point of neutrality, is it not important that we also have kind of independent data or independent measurement in order to kind of really drive an authentic kind of omnichannel experience?
I think you need a mix of both. I mean, ideally, you need the proprietary in order to set yourself apart. And also with proprietary, you obviously have access to raw data, you have access to all the raw information, and obviously you can use your data scientists in order to sort of build out something more robust and really sort of get, you know, fully under the hood. But I definitely think it's important to give choice to clients. I think that's probably the operative word is choice. They need to be able to choose should they want to use a certain vendor that is independent. I know whether it's a Kantar or whether it's a AdSquare or or IAS. There we go. Mention IAS, Nick. I mean, they should be able to. So I don't think you should be pushing out, not to name any names, but a one size fits all. Like obviously one of the big players in the market tends to do. So I think there's definitely something that can be looked at negatively for marking your own homework, but equally I do think having and owning and developing proprietary measurement tools that drive omnichannel is definitely something that should be done, but it should be done alongside offering the independent vendors as well.
Maybe it's also a bit of, or maybe it's also a bit of, so when we think about advertisers are consulting auditing companies to also measure the success of campaigns. So that is also where we need to have, whatever we think about what we can build is when an auditing company and an advertiser are sitting in a room and looking at the results of a campaign, we need to understand what are the factors that are driving a good or a bad rating of a campaign setup. So there is also another party that needs to be involved in that, because that is judging on what we are doing also on behalf of the clients.
And then I think there's some big education that needs to be done as well, right? With the auditors on looking at auditing through a very different lens on some of these channels, right? You can't compare a CTV campaign in the same way to a display campaign or kind of a mobile app business, which isn't CTV. Or Alice, we could probably debate whether or not CTV is mobile app or not, but there we go. I think there's just, it strikes me that there's education that needs to be done across the industry, but it is super exciting. And actually hearing you talk gives me a lot of confidence, because I actually do feel like even through this conversation that omnichannel is here right now. And we have a responsibility to kind of unpack it and kind of, educate our industry and educate all the players involved on how to do it effectively and efficiently. How do you see the future of omnichannel over the next few years? How do you see it evolving? I think some of the answers we've hinted at during the course of this conversation, but Eke, can I come to you first on this? How do you see the future evolving?
So you've mentioned that we as an SSP are more servicing in those situations. I think there is coming more work for us as an ESP, as an SSP. We are seeing a lot of duty coming into our direction to also prepare the inventory in a different way, to structure it, to support the publishers and pass the right inventory to the DSPs to be bought on. So there is a lot of work for us to do. So we are not just only an inventory source or part of a huge stack that a publisher has, because we know across multiple markets, there are sometimes 20 or 25 plus SSPs plugged into a stack. I think it is also important for us to work in the ecosystem with the publishers, agencies, DSPs, and advertisers to increase our relevance when it comes to driving omnichannel, packaging the inventory in the right way, using the right data points to pass inventory that could be bought on. That is something where we see that this is something that will be our work for the next time.
You're on mute.
Twice in one webinar, that's not good, is it? Alice, from a DSP perspective, based on what Eki was just saying here about how the SSPs will evolve for omnichannel.
Yeah, I mean, obviously we've seen quite a bit in the news recently that SSPs are starting to move towards having more direct relationship with clients, and I think that's potentially always been the case, whereby that they have been an influence either within the agencies for agencies building out their own marketplaces, and also with clients themselves, especially when supply for the most part can be accessed from multiple different places. From a DSP perspective, look, Yahoo is an omni-channel DSP, whether it's TV, digital out of home, audio, display, mobile, etc. We don't, obviously we understand the differences between the channels, but we don't, we try to push as much as possible to clients the benefit of actually bringing those channels together in a more seamless way, and actually that will actually save them money and drive better results, either for themselves as direct client or for their clients if we're working with the agencies. I do think that the next 12 months is going to be interesting. What's going to be happening with regards to cookieless, actually what will land in the next 12 months. But I also think that we're starting to see a greater sort of desire to collaborate within the industry and actually bring those data points that Alex has mentioned a few times sort of together. I think there's a recognition that we can't all operate in silos, and that in order to actually drive effectiveness, we need to be working together. So look, I see that there's going to be I think a greater shift towards some omni-channel. I'd love to start seeing the agencies actually sort of build out their omni-channel teams and sort of start to see the specialist teams, especially within TV and out of home, be sort of brought into one place. But I do think we have a huge amount of work to do, especially on the measurement side. But yeah, no, I just see it's going to grow. I really do think it's going to grow.
Thank you, Alice. And Alex, coming to you, the future. Are you seeing in Group M Nexus and that we're going to start to have these specialist teams? And I'm seeing you obviously being a specialist specifically on omnichannel. Are we going to start to see an evolution of the kind of agency team as Alice was describing?
Yeah, I would think we will. Whether that's a specific omnichannel team or a way of part of current teams planning and assigning budgets in a different way than they are now, then yeah, potentially I do see that happening. I think that for omnichannel specifically, we need a way of managing that part of the process. So I think that's really key. Whether that has a bigger impact on how agencies run and plan individual channels is obviously a different question. But yeah, I would see that. And I think for the future, the key point is the bit that Alice finished on there is that measurement, is this continued evolution of the universal KPI. You know, how can we take the data that we've already got and use it, but also with, you know, there's many more AI tools that are coming in that anybody is going to be able to use to take these big data sets and do things with them and learn from them. So I think there's definite kind of a lot of effort and work will go into that. And it's going to be really interesting to see where we end up with that. And I think that, you know, if you come back to what I said right at the beginning, you know, if we're looking at this as we're trying to be more efficient, we're trying to do more with less, you know, what that has the potential of doing is also reduce wastage. And, you know, reducing wastage, being more efficient, not only drives better performance, but it potentially has a wider point around sustainability and, you know, our ambitions for like add net zero. Like if we're able to reduce wastage by running omnichannel campaigns, then maybe this helps us along the way to that path, which obviously as an industry is hugely important that we're all on that path together.
100%. 100%. And Steph, can I come to you for a last comment on what you see the future of omnichannel being?
Of course. So just to sum up, I think that's definitely closer interaction, not only between publisher and SSP, but also between publisher, SSP, DSP, agencies, and advertisers. We need to work and collaborate together here. Number two, definitely we need more use cases, right? And we need to find out how we can adjust, you know, our ways of measurement across omnichannel campaigns. But to be honest, I don't think that there will be an identical formula for all campaigns. So I think still every campaign has its goals and its peculiarities. So from the SSP perspective, we'll still continue to adjust our services accordingly, right? But definitely what can we do better is to analyze the right data, target the right audience with the right ad, and of course, get the most of return of investment for the advertiser.
100%. I mean, it's about us all coming together. And I think actually, Alex, you just raised a really important topic at the end as well, which is around kind of sustainable advertising, right? And we should all be moving to a more sustainable way of, you know, delivering great advertising experiences for consumers. And omnichannel could be the key to doing that if it's going to create even more efficiencies within the programmatic landscape. So I guess we're at time. I just want to say a big thank you to all of you for making this a really interesting conversation. It could have definitely gone beyond the allotted 1 hour, I think. So thank you very much.
And a big thank you to Nick for hosting this, to Eki, Alex, staff, and to Alice for joining us. We knew this would be a very complex session, which is why normally the approach at IAB Europe is, oh, we'll write a guide. No, we need to talk about it first. So we're going to have lots more on this conversation, and we'll be doing a full kind of transcript just to pull out some of the main findings, because there was so much today. So that'll be coming soon. And then in regards to this recording, it will be uploaded onto our website in the next day or so, and everyone will be able to access it there. But stay tuned for more on our journey to unpacking programmatic. So thanks to everyone for joining, and we look forward to seeing you soon. Thanks very much. Enjoy your afternoon. Bye-bye.
Thanks all.
Thank you.
Thank you.